everybody, and welcome to the show. The best talk show of its kind in Central Europe, perhaps in the universe, and from time to time, we're actually watchable. But today is going to be very watchable. We're going to be doing a review of the last year, where we were a year ago and where we are today in Central Europe and Ukraine, and how things have changed, both on the aid front and in terms of the military situation. You know, a year ago, we were watching the buildup around Ukraine, Belarus, to the east in the Donbass area. We were watching 200,000 Russian troops, as well as we were watching any amount of tanks, several thousand, etc., Navy moving into the Black Sea, rockets being prepared to launch, all kinds of things, and wondering what was going to happen and when, but being rather hesitant to believe that something would happen, certainly the way it has. It's been a year of surprises. Also, it was right the end of that other very strange episode in our recent lives, which was the 2-year COVID experience, which is not our subject today. And oddly enough, nuclear war, which has been something in the backs of all our minds, most of us, since, well, virtually all of us since we were born. The prospect of nuclear war being something that we actually talk about on a regular basis. It's just quite a change in over a year. Right, and with me to discuss these events, both in the aid area and in the war, about the war, is David Kaiser, Vietnam veteran, who did very interesting and dangerous things in the Vietnam War, but we won't harp on that right now. We might get a story out of you a bit later. And one of my favorite people to talk to, great storyteller, David Kaiser. And I call him Colonel David Kaiser because he's thinking of opening a fried chicken franchise the last time I was talking to him. And it will be thumb-licking good. And on the horn from various parts of the country, of Poland, we have from beautiful downtown Warsaw, but in another area of Warsaw, we're in the kind of the center, well, Muranov district, we have Professor. I call him Professor, because he should be. He's not, he's going to shake his head. I'm only an instructor, he says, or whatever. Sinologist, historian, expert on the Oriental countries, what they used to call the Oriental countries, now they call the Far East. Olgierd Ujimbo.
Hello.
Yeah, not bad, huh? You got it? Yeah.
Well done.
I've been practicing. The producer's telling me it was okay as well, so I got the green light on the name. It's always good. And then our contributor, like Olgierd, is Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez, and coming to us from Bydgoszcz, is it today, or where are you?
Gdynia today.
Gdynia, okay. Right up on the coast, the port city of Gdynia, Poland's busiest port, isn't it? The busiest port? I think it's the #1 port on the Baltic, isn't it? Out of all of them, I read recently. No?
Yeah, recently because of the recent...
I did read this recently, yeah. And I was surprised. Gdansk is like #3, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that is something. So Poland, really, in the center of things. Did you hear that Poland was voted the best top European destination for
Yes. I can understand.
2023?
Yeah.
Finally, Poland's karmic reward, I call it. It deserves it. I mean, I've been covering travel in Poland for, gosh, 4 years and plus now with Poland Daily Travel, and which is freely available on YouTube. And I've been telling people, fascinating country.
Absolutely.
And I'm no longer a voice crying in the wilderness. I tend to weep more than cry. You know? So I'm much more of a weeper.
And you brought in Shirley Temple as the patron saint of the museum.
I did. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I went over to the place. I talked about it last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. These episodes are coming up now on Poland Daily Travel. The most amazing museum I've ever seen, in certainly unique, absurdist museum in Kalisz, which is be on my channel actually. There's a will. So, all right, fellows. A year ago, let's just do a round robin of where you were, what was in your head, and what you were doing a year ago as we waited to see what would happen. David, you want to lead off?
Well, prior to that, in November, when there was this tension on the Belarusian border, you know, Anthony and I talked about it. I think that Poland was being provoked. This is my opinion. Anthony told me once that the Polish troops were told not to fire unless fired upon. I think we're being provoked, and Poland didn't fall for it. And then all of a sudden we had this invasion. My opinion is that the Russians thought they'd just drive in with tanks and would be over with. And I think they made a major tactical error. If you look at the tanks going down the road, there's no security to the left or security to the right, and they were just sitting ducks. And then we saw one group where the tank drivers ran out of gasoline and drove up to the police department asking for gasoline. And we saw that. And then we had the influx of refugees coming across the border, and Poland stepped up. There was no tent cities. People are in homes. People are being taken care of. And we've had 4 to 8 million people come through the border now. And right now we may have to resume the same thing again. I know in August I was down with Ray Warwick down to Medyka, and there was as many people going back to Ukraine as were coming over. Maybe a little bit more coming over. Something else that I was shocked at the Polish hospitality, even the exchanges, the currency exchanges, were the same price on the border as they were in Warsaw. There was no gouging, which I thought was really nice. Mm-hmm. So, but it's been a horrible war. And maybe I'll stop there and let Anthony talk.
That's a good intro. Thank you very much. Exactly what we needed. Anthony, and then we'll have your say, and then we'll go to Olgierd, who I'm sure also will have a unique contribution, as usual. Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah, so David hit it on the head. We were talking last year. Last year we were gathering intelligence, and we were seeing the Russians massing on the border. We were spreading the information to the needed embassies to prepare to help Ukraine, and because they're just a typical tendency of Russia, but they were blaming that, it's just training exercises that they're conducting. So they were still slightly risk adverse as to wanting to do anything at all. And you can still see that in the main embassy that was conducting that was Germany, where they were saying that there's nothing going to be done, and that's still kind of risk adverse. As you can see, most of these tanks that are declared to come over to the Ukraine are not even coming until June, and that's if the ammunition, but that's another story. And then, when the day hit, I was just barely gathering intelligence for certain individuals, and the very next day I was heading on over, and I was there for 3 weeks.
You were there the very next day after the beginning of the war, and I went over in the first week too, but I'm sure not on as interesting a mission as you. Where were you in that first? Can you say where you were in the first couple of weeks there?
Yeah, we were just going over there doing reconnaissance, not only for the planned triage centers outside of the cities, outside of the major, not cities, but outside of the major
triage
crossing.
Centers are places where they would handle the wounded, right? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then after that, we went all the way to Kharkiv and to the east and helped deliver some equipment that was already being given. And we had to fight our way back through Kiev and helped a lot of people cross the bridges.
Did you say you had to fight your way back?
Yeah.
Literally?
I'm not even kidding you. I wish I was.
What did it mean having...
We had to actually shoot, move, and communicate with the guys that were actually protecting us.
Uh-huh. You had to what?
We literally had to fire weapons in order to protect ourselves with the guys that were protecting us.
Oh, together you were at arms. And was this because of advanced Russian units that you ran into, or? Because we haven't talked about this. That's why we're doing it today. Yeah.
There were more Russian units ready and able back then than there were Ukrainian soldiers.
Had they parachuted in, or had they just been able to outrun, or they were like advanced scouting units?
These are scout units. These are guys that are already entrenched on the eastern side.
Around Kharkiv area. Yeah.
Roger.
I was telling another person who's going to be a guest on the show was talking about how he was out there. He's ex-military Marine and something of a runner. And he said that they were going for runs into the hills out there with the locals and watching the Russians maneuver at some point last spring, which I thought was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But not quite as close contact as what you're describing. Okay, so that's something I did not know, and thanks for telling us that, Anthony. I admire you even more than I did before. Okay, Olgierd.
Well, I was observing things that are happening on the Russia-China line, so I've been actually at this very table really early. It was during the night when they broadcast the previously recorded Putin's declaration of special army operation, in which he asked the Ukrainian soldiers to give up fight and to just hand over their weapons to the Russian troops and cooperate with the new with their new bosses. And I thought to myself, it is one of the greatest political mistakes that Russia is doing, because it was just for me, it was unthinkable that this will happen, although everybody knew it will happen eventually after 2008 and Georgia. That Russia is going to encroach and encroach and encroach and encroach, and they will not stop it until they are stopped. So that was what I realized, and I didn't know which way will the war go, although I was pretty sure that Ukraine is not going to lie down, because my father worked in Ukraine and as a trade counselor and in Polish embassy in Kiev and in consul office in Lviv. And I've been to Ukraine many times, and I know Ukraine more or less. And I must say, I was pretty sure that they're not going to give up the fight, not easily at least. And well, I hoped it will be shorter than it is now, but well, I was deeply in shock at that time. I couldn't stop watching.
Yes, yes. Well, I just, boy, in listening to all three of you, there are elements of my own experience too, both the intellectual and the actual many travels to the border in March, crossing over, viewing the people escaping in the Lviv station. That was one of the most moving things I've ever seen, because there was this serenity, this quiet, David. Mm-hmm. There was this resolution. Mm-hmm. There was this order to the misery, mm-hmm. which was the only consolation, perhaps, that mm-hmm. they had, was that they could be ordered in their evacuation. Yes. And it really was awe-inspiring, and you realize you were witnessing a moment of history just mm-hmm. in the movement of people and the behavior of people mm-hmm. and what that represented. When you got that many people moving, it was a shift. Mm-hmm. It was a shift in the history of Europe happening right before your eyes. Mm-hmm. It's a little different from experience from the experience of Antony, who was out there and had, that combat, that yes. unexpected combat. I mean, that's a totally different experience, which I find would be harrowing for me. Although I've been in some weird situations, that sounds pretty harrowing. And I'm sure you have that experience.
Well, there was a time that Anthony has been there many, many times.
Yes.
But we have a friend, Andrew Hope. I don't know if you know Andrew.
I know Andrew.
And he needed a ride down to the border.
Yeah.
And Anthony took him down with a friend, and And Andrew said, well, you know, I've never ridden with an escort, armed escort before. So he went down to the border to work on the, you remember that, Anthony? And he had the guns in the car, and, and he was impressed.
Yeah, see, both of you have been a lot more hands-on. I've been kind of in the studio. I'm going to be more active in going to Ukraine this year and reporting from there. But for other reasons, I've had to stay here, not because I didn't want to go, but I've been at the border a lot and trying to help people, put people together as much as I could. But I tried to do as much as I could. But apart from reporting, which is actually my job, you know. And we got 50 hours now about Central Europe mostly. I mean, we did our UFO show with you.
Yeah.
But that's become relevant again with the recent Chinese balloons and shooting down people, you know, balloons from the carnival that went up.
And the guys following it in their windshield, thinking it was bird dropping on the windshield.
Bird dropping on the windshield. I see Anthony laughing because I'm sure he finds this amusing. But I want to say that we'll talk about aid stuff that everybody's been doing the second half, but let's stick with this. That's okay. That's okay. People are allowed to call you.
Well,
I picked it up one time and said, "Hey, never call me when I'm in the studio. What's the matter with you?" They didn't know I was in the studio. It's good TV.
it could be the Pope. You never
It's good TV. You never know. It could be the Pope. The Pope watches this show. Yeah. So, but at any rate, the experience of Anthony, you have experience. You were special services with a special service as a medical officer, weren't you? Is that true? Yeah.
Communicator and medic.
Yeah, communicator and medic. Yeah. So this is, you know, most of the highly trained. One of the most, because you have to do weapons as well, right? You have to do everything. Yeah. So you're like the most valuable person.
The most valuable person on our team was the medic.
Yeah.
But the assistant helping him out.
Yeah, exactly. Because you got to keep people alive. And then the communications person is absolute to call in strikes or to let people know where you are and how your movements are going. Very important. With your war experience, how is this war different? We'll come to you next, Olgerd. Different question for you. How is this war different based on your war experience?
Well, the fact that it's closer to home. But no, it's different because it feels like genocide. That was the original intent for the Russians to go in there. They knew that the Ukrainians were going to try and fight back, and then they're just killing people randomly. It almost feels exactly like Bosnia again. It's something that I hoped would never happen here in Europe, but it has happened again. That's exactly the only.
This is a very good point. I've heard it in another something I was watching on YouTube. By a very interesting expert, Zion is his name, American from Colorado. Is it Peter, I think? He was saying that in the kind of casualties that are happening are similar to the first year of the Holocaust.
Yes.
Right? Have you heard that too?
Yes, but the thing with this is that they're trying to bury it, and there's too many of them, and a lot of the regions that are being controlled by the Russians are the regions that are really bad. And we have one example right outside of Kiev, Bucha. Yes. And Bucha had massive mass graves, and they're still digging up those graves right now. And as we go further towards there, we don't know what kind of mass graves held, because they even brought in the incinerators and to try and cover up their tracks.
You're incinerating people, Nazi style. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only people, they're soldiers, because they are idiots. They don't have the ability to bring them back because they don't plan logistically. And that's the other thing. That's a thing here that we're learning. And that we knew here in the West that we needed logistics, but even our logistics programs or logistics means are strained. We haven't really been tested the logistics at all since the last World War. Yeah, the Americans can reach out in a span, but how long can they sustain it? They really don't know. They've reached out to their allies, for 20 years in Afghanistan, but that was because everybody continuously did it. It became a business. It became mundane. It became day-to-day activities. This war is not. This war is a war of attrition, and
Yes.
that's what we're facing.
Yes, good points. And especially the war of attrition, but that ties in with the wholesale murder. Let's call it what it is. It's wholesale, premeditated murder.
I have a question to Anthony.
Yes, all good.
Anthony, from your experience, since you were medical help, if a soldier is injured in one of the extremities within the American field of medical help, what is the probability of him having an amputation?
It really depends on how fast we can actually get him to treatment. Because if the mission dictates it too, that's the other thing. We're mission first. We have to make sure we have to clear the area to be safe for him, for us to be treating. If the area is not safe, sorry, buddy, you're gonna have to wait until we're actually able to get to you. After that, we tourniquet on the upper, so any joint. So let's just say, for instance, it's a knee joint. So it's a knee joint, a calf injury, per se. So we put a tourniquet above the knee. People say, why above the knee? Well, because it still needs to be mobile, and you need to restrict the blood where it's still actually able, not on the wound, because you're actually going to cause much more injury to the wound.
Yeah.
And you actually limit the chance of success to actually keep that limb or that wound sustainable, because there's less blood loss. If you
why am I asking this question? Because apparently one of the biggest problem of Russian military now, since they are much worse in helping and the hospitals of the second line, and they apparently lose a lot of people's limbs now.
It's not only limbs. This is they don't care.
Yes.
The one thing that they have guys that they're sending back with war injuries still, and sending them to the front lines. They don't care.
Have you heard the Prigozhin's little quip about one of the guys who was sent back to the field with a steel leg and lost it, and they had to make him a second one?
No, yeah, I've actually seen the fact that they've sent guys that still have shrapnel, massive shrapnel, bullet wounds. Some of the shrapnel that has had some of the abdominal wounds that they sent right back if they're still able to be walking. And if they're not able to be walking, they'll force them to walk, causing more internal injuries to the front line, because they're just going to send them. It's like cannon fodder. They're sending people like cannon fodder. They don't care. They're animals. That's what we are looking.
It sounds to me that it's very similar to what you might read about the American Civil War in terms of amputations, and that there were, but that was because medical science was just not very far advanced at all compared to what we have today.
Another part of that
but it sounds like the Russians are doing that, recreating that just out of lassitude, out of
well, you
lack
notice
of care.
The other part of that story. The other part of that story is after the Second World War, when there were also many injured, because Russians never changed tactics in the Second World War, and even now they're using the same tactics. There was a lot of people which were injured, a lot of people without limbs, and they summarily arrested them to get them off the street a few years after the war. And those people, instead of being venerated as veterans, were sent to the islands to die out.
They were seen as embarrassments to society because they had a weakness, and you're not allowed to have a weakness.
And this is one of the grand
where does this Russian... I mean, the biggest thing we're really fighting here is this Russian, this very particular Russian idea of who they are as a people and what their history is, right?
Well, I tell you something. I don't know whether you listen to Nevzorov. He's one of the Russians that was now convicted to 9 years in prison for his simply saying things.
Enlighten us, yeah.
Nevzorov is a journalist, actually more of a kind of essayist, also TV essays. He was just simply commenting upon what is happening in Russia. He used to be on the council of Putin. He took part on the Russian side in Chechen war, so he's no angel. But then he started noticing things, and now he changed his front, and he strongly supported Ukraine. And he was convicted now. Luckily he escaped, and he lives in Europe now. He was convicted to 9 years in prison, and he made one comment upon, now, is it a Russian fault? He said, it's not exactly Russian fault. Russians are just people like the other people. And this is not genomic, because, come on, genetics do not take any play in it, because that will be completely racist. But there must be something wrong with the culture.
Yes, it's a culture. It's not a, I mean, you know, the Russians aren't any different than anyone else. But the culture is certainly different. I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah.
We need to put Sigmund Freud or somebody like that on this. We need a team of very good top psychologists, psychiatrists, to look at the Russian psyche. I mean, there's a great book to be written about this. I don't know who would write. I think maybe somebody like Andrei Konchalovsky, who I once interviewed, the great film director, descendant of Tolstoy, who really had some extraordinary insights into the Russian character. He's an anti-Putin, but rather quietly, as one needs to be if one wants to live in Russia, although in some sense he's untouchable because he's so famous. But his brother, another film director, Mikhailov, is...
Mikhalkov.
Mikhalkov, yes. So, thanks. There I go again. Ujiembo, thank you. Gold star. Huh? Put it right there. But not good on the other one. How do you say his name again, the director?
Nikita Mikhalkov.
Mikhalkov, yeah. Who did a film called Burnt by the Sun, which won Academy Award. It's about the Stalin years. And he acts in it as well. Anyway, he is a Putin supporter. So you have these two famous descendants, brothers, you know, both film directors, leading artists, not only in Russia, but in the world. And they are rather diametrically opposed and have very different opinions of the Russian spirit. Isn't that fascinating?
It is fascinating.
So one of them, I mean, Konchalovsky should probably write that book and tell us more. We're running down to the last 2 minutes. I want to come back to David, because in the second half we're going to talk, it's interesting that Olgierd brought up the subject of prosthesis or prosthetics, because that is going to be something we're going to be talking about in the second half, because the biggest thing in war is to supply your troops with everything they need and medical care for your troops, as Anthony already said, even in particularly forward special forces groups, you know, the medical officer is crucial. It's also crucial. Army marches on its stomach, Napoleon famously said, and we see the results in the retreat from Moscow. They also need warm clothes, another problem, which the Russians didn't have either, nor medical care. And I remember on this show saying, in the first month of the war, I don't see how they're going to supply these people. You know that they haven't sent these guys in with even a month's rations, even a couple of weeks. You know they haven't. Where are they going to get the petroleum to run all these machines, the gasoline? Where's it going to come from? They don't have it.
No.
So they're going to stall out.
It's not in Ukraine.
Plus the weather is not.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to bog down. If you get off the road, single file, as you made the point, you're going to be in fields and bogged down. Yeah? So you become sitting duck. And then it's easy to create a roadblock.
And you've seen that.
And that's what we watched happen. And we said it right here. But we didn't hear the experts, even like Peter Zayan and many other experts, military, government, etc., Europe, other countries, United States particularly. We didn't see them saying this. Very few people were making that point. Even military people. It was astounding to me. And morale. So you have to have morale. If you don't have supply, you don't have morale.
Absolutely.
You have no army.
Absolutely.
At that point. And that's what we saw happen.
No Budweiser in the battlefield.
You got to have Budweiser.
You got to have Budweiser.
Or you got to have a place where you can get it.
That's right.
In the tent, right? There's a tent over there. It's got all the Budweiser. Hey, where's the ammo? Oh, it's over there. It's called Budweiser.
Fetch an ammo. Fetch an ammo.
Fetch the ammo, and we're ready to go. Right. So this was something that we were talking about on this show, but then I suppose that comes from more of a knowledge. People we have on this show have a knowledge of history, Central Europe, Russia, and Ukraine, and they know the places. They've been to the places well before the war. I mean, myself, I'd been to Ukraine at least 24, maybe 30 times since 2005. Yeah. Anyway, we got to finish. That's the end of my speech. When we come back, I just wanted to round that off. And when we come back, let's talk about, we'll lead off with David, who's got something to say and about cooperation on medical aid and sort of replacing missing limbs, what it is. Yeah. Okay. On that note, please watch these advertisements. They're very important. Don't turn away if you're watching this on television. If you're on YouTube, hey, just subscribe. Why not? Or Facebook. Okay. See you after the break. Okay, everybody, welcome back to There's a Will. There is a will right here, and there's a Colonel Kaiser, I call him, if I may.
Not quite.
No, Captain Kaiser?
Captain Kaiser.
Captain Kaiser. I promoted you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, but I'm going to promote you more. You're reading a great book. What's that called?
Well, I had to come on this show to see this book. I haven't had a chance to buy it yet, and now I may not have to buy it.
You don't have to buy it. That's a gift.
Well, thank you very much.
Because you're a gentleman of note. Yeah.
Well.
And you can also read. I mean, I'll give a book to anybody who can read.
Well, I saw Craig the other day. He was excited because he could read it.
Yeah, Craig is always very excited that he can read. He's a reader. He says, I can read. Yeah. I thought you were just a businessman.
He said, no wonder it's so thick. The fonts are quite high,
There's a part about Vietnam in the beginning. It's not about me, this book. I was not in Vietnam.
Well.
How could I?
Is this from Jeff?
As a child soldier? Yeah.
Well, you were still probably standing up in your crib wetting your pants.
Yeah, I was wetting my pants. That's right. I would have been wetting them there, too. It would have been the first or the last time. Anyway, Rome. Show the people the book there.
All right.
You can buy this on Amazon, folks. He's getting a free copy because he's a good man.
Well, that's nice. Thank you very much.
And he's a Vietnam fella. So, and that's the hero of this book starts off as in Vietnam. It's a kind of Forrest Gump's smarter brother. Now, you gave me this.
Yes.
That's the Alamo. You can't read it. It's back. No, there it is. Okay. The Alamo and Azovstal. What does it mean? What does it mean?
Well, that was the Alamo is where the Texans held in Davy Crockett and so forth. And 13 Scottish men were there at the Alamo.
1836.
1836 held up the Mexican army. They didn't. In the end, they all died. But they held them off for several days and gave Sam Houston the chance to build his army.
Yeah.
And there are some people from Poland.
Azovstal.
There were people from Poland as well. Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing story.
It was run by the Polish guy.
Listen, if there's anybody out there who doesn't know the story of the Alamo, watch a documentary on the YouTube there. Even John Wayne made a film about the Alamo.
Oh, yeah.
And there are various renditions of the Alamo. It's really one of the most exciting American stories.
And Azovstal was the holdout against the Russians in Ukraine in the early part of the war.
In Mariupol.
Yes.
The factory.
Yes, absolutely, in the factory.
The Azovstal factory in Mariupol, similar story to the Alamo, which was the Adobe fortress. I've been there.
Yeah.
It's in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it was a sort of church with the surrounding building.
It was a mission.
A mission, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, Azovstal. Okay, that goes on the car. I was thinking of that too. When that was going on, I was thinking, good Lord, it reminds me of the Alamo.
Absolutely. That was given to me yesterday at a meeting from another Texan who happened to be coming through at that time. So that was nice.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Now, you've been doing a lot of work with, as many people have, with taking care of the wounded, and one of the most important, perhaps the most drastic wounds are when people are missing a limb, an arm, a leg, a hand.
Brought this up earlier.
Yeah. Olga brought it up.
And maybe we'll go into that if it's okay, a little bit of history.
Yeah.
When the war began, the U.S. Embassy here shifted all the humanitarian work to the commercial attaché department. And at that time, in early March, August Mission was on the ground with supplies coming in from Salt Lake City. They took it into Lviv, working with the orphanages and so forth. As early as in March, St. Jude had been in to take cancer kids, 50 cancer kids that came across the border, to take care of them in the various hospitals, and some of them went back to the States. And then in May, as time went on, I was at a commercial attaché meeting with August Mission people, and Ray Voyek, who is retired Army, was Office of Defense Cooperation. We were there, and there were two gentlemen from Ukraine, the National Guard. One was also from the U.S. Embassy, and the purpose of the meeting was to work on setting up a green zone to get supplies in quickly across the border to the designated locations. And they were working on that. And another approach was to develop a web page where organizations could post what they needed under one central location. And at the end of that meeting, casually, one of the gentlemen, the National Guard members from Ukraine, mentioned amputees. And it was the first time that had come up in any discussion or any thought process. And so Anthony and I come out of a background where we don't leave anybody behind. And people that we work with don't leave anybody behind, primarily. And we started to think about it, and because of present and past relationships, we were able to develop a concept where we got from Texas Children's Hospital to Baylor College of Medicine, which handled globally prosthesis. And from that, we worked with Alliance for Innovation, which came together working with Baylor College of Medicine. Alliance for Innovation is a NGO here in Poland that does a lot of work in the cancer area, but now they're doing a lot of work in the psychological, PTSD. Baylor College of Medicine for prosthesis, and the Holodomor, which is a prosthesis supplier internationally, came together, working with the Ukrainian National Guard to identify patients, to transport patients. And we learned this early part of May from the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. They had, in May, or early June, they had over 400 amputees in Ukraine. Now they have probably in excess of 500. And nothing happens rapidly, which is very frustrating. But early on, through some of the partners, the Veterans Administration in the United States, some hospitals here, now in coordination with the Polish Ministry of Health, trying to do prosthesis. And it's a very expensive process. This, Azovov, in March, there were two soldiers that both lost left arms in March and April. And one of them was also a prisoner after the amputation for 1.5 months, and I think this is right. And Anthony really is the hero of this project, because after all this time, we needed to bring these two guys into Warsaw at a hospital to do prosthesis with Holodomor, which is here, to put on new left arms. And
maybe we could switch to Anthony and let him tell us about that. Could you tell us something about that process, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. The process was not very well thought out. The international companies were not working together. They were taking too long. And the guys already in the Ukraine were ready to be moved over here to Poland. They didn't even think about how to coordinate with the guards, both the Ukrainian side and the Polish side, because Polish have different regulations than the Ukrainian, of course. And yet they're only 5-6 meters apart, literally, sometimes even less, because they're in the same buildings. Well, not in the same buildings, but the same proximity. Nobody thought about that. So immediately I started, there was a meeting that we had Thursday, and the guys were coming on Friday, or was it Saturday?
Yeah.
It was Saturday. It was Saturday. And nothing was done. I'm like, this is going to fall flat on its face, and they desperately need these prostheses. So I called the contacts that I needed to open the doors, talk to the Polish border guard chief, and told them, hey, this is the location, these are the troops, these are the names, these are their provisions, their ID cards, these are the vehicles that they're going to be traveling in, these are the vehicles they're going to be getting in, this is where their place is going to be, this is the route to and from, and this is the route to and from Warsaw, from point B, where they actually meet up and link up, and they're going to stay for this amount of time. It was just basically covering the 5 W's and giving them an extremely detailed version of it. But nobody had the foresight to do that, or at least they didn't even think that it was necessary because, oh, yes, we're military, we're okay to cross the border. No, you're entering an international border. It's a different country completely. You still have to coordinate effectively. So we actually did that, and we got it done. And that's thanks to a lot of my contacts and mates that work still here at the U.S. Embassy. Without them, this would not have ever happened.
So you were pioneering this kind of transfer, and has it made subsequent evacuations easier?
Yes, it actually has. But the only thing we're struggling with, as David alluded to, is actually the funding, because these prostheses are not cheap. Some of them, they range between 25 and 50,000, depending on the complexity of it.
Yeah. Have you been in touch with people, some of the I don't know the name of the manufacturers, but Warsaw, Indiana is the major place in the world for manufacturing prosthesis. Have you been in touch with them?
No.
I wonder if there's some way to get them involved.
Well, the Veterans Administration in Richmond, Virginia handles all the prosthesis for the U.S. military.
Right, okay.
So
You're working with them?
We're working indirectly with them, yes.
Yeah. But I'm wondering if you could talk to the manufacturers, get discount, or some kind of thing.
Well, one advantage here as humanitarian, the value-added tax, which is 8% on prosthesis, is gone away with. So that knocks off some of the costs there.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah.
But Anthony is really the hero of this project right now, because late at night, we had to make a decision because the National Guard was transporting the troops from Lviv to Warsaw, and we had not concluded the relationship with the necessary hospital. And fortunately, because of Anthony and his connections and also Phil Goss on the border, we were able to buy...
Phil Goss, who's been on the show before.
We were able to buy some time until we finalized the deal. And they came to Poland, stayed in the hospital, and immediately Holodomor was on the scene the next day to measure. And each one of these individuals will probably stay a month, okay, for the fitting, the manufacturing. Right now we have 5 scheduled to come in. 2 of them are missing both legs above the knee, one missing the leg below the knee, 1 arm, and 1 foot. And so we're working on that. The process is very complicated because I don't like paperwork. But
gosh, who does?
Once the patient is identified and we feel that we can accept him medically, we send an invitation from Warsaw, which comes from Alliance for Innovation, goes to the ministry, goes to the National Guard, which takes 2 to 3 days to prepare the paperwork to cross the border. In support of that, everybody that's coming over will sign an informed consent form where they agree to the transportation, where they agree to the sharing of the medical information, and where they agree to the treatment. And then we're set up. But there are a lot of things we learned. We learned that in the prosthesis for the arms, even though you're having rehabilitation in Ukraine, all the amputations are in Ukraine. The rehabilitation is not necessarily focused on the right muscles for arms. Okay, legs are a little bit different. So we learned a lot. We're better prepared, but Anthony brought it up. It's a very expensive process. To do 100 soldiers, women or children or civilians or what, it's about $4 million. These 2 prostheses each for these 2 men from this Astrovo were 60,000 euro. 2 of them.
Wow.
So it's not a cheap process, but the technology is fantastic, and there's no skimping on the product. This is top. This is what American soldiers would receive.
Yeah, and David, to caveat on that, these prosthetics, they're not your normal prosthetics. They're not just mechanical. These are neurologically controlled prosthetics. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why these amputations have to be conducted almost fresh, because if they don't work the muscles to keep the nerves alive, and let alone the muscles to keep the circulation going, it actually negates and actually gets worse to try and find the right muscle groups and actually to see if they will actually work with them. So that's why time is of the essence when we actually have these amputees ready to go. And the reason why the funding is actually causing a lot of this issue, that they're not going to get the proper prosthetics to get there. So they're going to be relying on mechanical, not these cutting edge prosthetics, which are, Autobach is working with a Canadian company that actually started this, and Autobach bought them out, and that's why they're here in Germany.
How can people who are watching and see this help you?
David and the team have already set up a funding that's direct. They can put in there immediately if they really want to. We highly encourage them to go through there. Yeah. It's fully legalized. We have, is it a broker, or is it, what is it?
Well, we've set up polytrauma.org.
Yeah.
Polytrauma.org. Okay,
for the center, trying to develop a center of excellence. Yeah. And not only is the prosthesis being applied here in Poland, and they have to go back, and Anthony took the first two men back to their home, and they were home before Christmas with their families, which was a nice feel-good deal. But it was not easy doing the whole project. But Anthony took them back home before Christmas, which was really nice.
Wow, it's
and one of them wanted tires, and it was a problem getting the tires in the car. But Anthony was able to, through the setup here, get the tires in the car to take them back home. We haven't really talked about it.
People have no idea how much of a circus a lot of this is, because there's so much pressure to get things done, and there's so much red tape. We're coming down to the end of the show. I've really enjoyed this. I think I want to thank you for coming in, David, and Anthony, of course, appearing. I want to come to Olgerd. Olgerd, could you give us some perspective, the last word today, on where we are a year in this situation? You've been on the show many times, as has Anthony. This is David's second or third appearance. But where are we today compared to a year ago, Olgerd?
Well, I think we're getting more and more organized. I think the West is not as well organized as it should be. But then a lot of people still get scared by Russia. I think we should finish with that. That's something we cannot do. I'm, for example, fed up with listening to people wondering, what will Putin say? I don't give. Well, there's some words I won't mention on the program, but I don't really care about what he says. There is a lot of scare about the grand Russian attack. It is going on right now, all the time, if you guys didn't notice. So we are in the war. We are the back line of the war. We are providing Ukrainians something that Poland was not provided in 1939, and that may well stop Russia from trying to take over entire Europe. Nothing else. We have to work.
Gosh, it wouldn't be the first time Poland has been instrumental in stopping an invasion from the east or southeast of Europe.
The instrumental ones are Ukrainians.
That's a good point. Helpful. Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. There's a nice little monograph or a short book to be written about those several episodes where Poland has, because of its position, been instrumental in defending the freedom of Europe from people who'd like to change their way of life.
Freedom of Europe is the freedom of the free world. The fate of the free world was literally decided by the hands of Polish.
Which times are you talking about, Anthony?
Definitely the Vienna War. That was the most pivotal war.
1683, yeah. Sobieski, yeah. At Vienna. Absolutely crucial point. There are others, but we're running out of time to talk about them today. Maybe we should do a show about Poland's importance in defending freedom, not just in Europe, but also in the United States. You know, there's a lot of two instrumental people, Pulaski and Kosciuszko, fighting with the colonialists against the British in the American Civil War. In fact, one of my relatives was under the command of Pulaski at Savannah. Right, that's all we have for today, folks. I want to thank you, David. Give me a handshake there.
My pleasure. Thank you
It's
very
good to
much.
see you, sir. It's always good to see you, Captain, Colonel, promoted, honorary Colonel on this show. And I want to thank you, Anthony McFarland Gonzalez, for your enlightening and illuminating conversation today, as well as your service, both in the military and outside recently. And Olgerd, as usual, the wise man who provides us with an overview and who speaks Chinese and writes it, which I'm going to say again. When you learn Sanskrit, I resign. I won't be able to deal with you anymore. Okay? So don't learn Sanskrit.
I feel challenged now.
Oh, gosh, if anybody could do it, you would. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you found this show entertaining and watchable. We do the best we can, and I thank you for watching. Please subscribe on YouTube and on Facebook to the show, and we'll see you next week.